Captain Vex 9 clicked his mandibles in what passed for amusement among the Cytherian military class. The massive alien stood nearly 9 feet tall, his 6 arms crossed in a configuration that screamed authority, while his compound eyes surveyed the assembled crowd of young cadets with barely concealed disdain. "So," his voice rumbled through the translation devices strapped to each student's collar, "today marks your first encounter with what we call a Grade 7 predator." He paused, letting that sink in. "For those keeping score at home, that's roughly 3 levels above what killed half your predecessors last semester." The cadets shifted nervously. These weren't your typical academy students. No, these were the cream of the crop from 17 different species across the Galactic Confederation. The best and brightest minds that each civilization had to offer. And right now, they all looked like they wanted to crawl under the nearest rock and hide. Almost all of them. Captain Vex 9's gaze lingered on the human female sitting in the 3rd row. While her classmates were exhibiting various species-appropriate fear responses, sweating through their environmental suits, twitching their tentacles, or molting stress scales, she just sat there, calm, collected, almost bored. Her name was Maya Collins, according to his roster. 22 years old, fresh from some backwater planet called Earth. Her species had only made contact with the Confederation 3 cycles ago, and yet here she was, somehow qualifying for the most advanced xenobiology program in known space. Humans. What a joke. "The Thornback Ravager," Vex 9 continued, his 4 primary eyes never leaving Maya, "stands 12 feet at the shoulder. Its hide can deflect standard plasma rounds. Its claws can slice through reinforced titanium like your grandmother's cooking knife through soft cheese. And its bite," he chuckled, a sound like grinding metal. "Let's just say the last cadet who got too close needed 3 different surgeries and a complete personality reconstruction." A Zilonian in the front row started hyperventilating, his gills fluttering rapidly. The instructor ignored him. "Oh, and did I mention?" Vex 9's mandibles clicked faster now, clearly enjoying himself. "It's been starved for the past week, just to make things interesting." Now that got everyone's attention. Whispered conversations in a dozen different languages filled the air. The universal translator struggled to keep up with the overlapping panic. Everyone except Maya, who had pulled out what appeared to be a small electronic device and was casually scrolling through something. "Miss Collins!" Vex 9's voice cracked like a whip. "Perhaps you'd like to share what's more important than learning how to avoid being eaten alive." Maya looked up, her expression completely neutral. "Just checking the weather back home, sir." "Looks like it's going to rain." The silence that followed could have been cut with a molecular blade. "The weather." Vex 9's voice was flat, disbelieving. "Yes, sir. My mom's got laundry hanging out, and she asked me to let her know if I saw rain in the forecast." Half the class was now staring at Maya as if she'd grown a second head. The other half was staring at Captain Vex 9, waiting to see if he would literally explode from rage. Instead, he laughed. Not his usual menacing chuckle, but an actual belly laugh that echoed off the reinforced walls of the observation deck. "Wonderful! Simply wonderful!" He wiped what might have been tears from his compound eyes. "Class, take note. This is what we in the military call catastrophically poor threat assessment." His gaze locked onto Maya again. "Miss Collins, since you're so concerned about terrestrial meteorology, perhaps you'd like to be our volunteer for today's demonstration." "Sure," Maya said, tucking her device away. "Sounds fun." Fun. she said. It sounds fun. The rest of the class began exhibiting what could only be described as advanced stages of panic. A Corvani started molting feathers all over the floor. The Zilonian from earlier had progressed to full-blown gill seizures. Even the normally stoic mechanoids were emitting worried beeping sounds. Outstanding. Captain Vex 9 rubbed his hands together, all 6 of them. Class, observe as we demonstrate the proper way to… Well, let's be honest. There isn't really a proper way. But it should be educational, nonetheless. The massive blast doors at the far end of the chamber began to iris open with a grinding mechanical sound that suggested they weren't used to opening for anything pleasant. Beyond them lay darkness so complete it seemed to swallow light itself. Before we begin, Vex 9 announced, I should mention that medical teams are standing by. We've also taken the liberty of contacting Miss Collins's next of kin. Standard procedure, you understand? Maya stood up, stretching casually. That's nice of you. Can you tell them I said hi? The instructor paused mid-gesture. I beg your pardon? My family. Can you tell them I said hi? Oh, and let them know I got their care package. The cookies were great, even if they did get a little stale during the 3-month journey. By now, the other students were openly gawking. This wasn't just poor threat assessment anymore. This was something else entirely. A low rumble emerged from the darkness beyond the blast doors. Not mechanical this time. Organic. Hungry. Ah, Captain Vex 9 said, with obvious satisfaction. I do believe our guest has awakened. The rumbling grew louder, accompanied by the sound of something very large moving through the shadows. Something with claws that clicked against metal flooring. Something that breathed in deep, ragged growls that spoke of barely controlled violence. And then it appeared. The Thornback Ravager was everything Captain Vex 9 had promised, and more. 12 feet of muscle, scale, and nightmare fuel. Its hide was a mottled black and green that seemed to shift in the artificial light. Rows of razor-sharp spines ran along its back, each one longer than a grown Catherian's arm. Its head was pure predator design, all teeth and predatory intelligence, with eyes that glowed a sickly yellow in the darkness. Those eyes swept the observation deck, taking in the assembled cadets with what could only be described as culinary interest. Several students actually fainted. The Corvani had progressed to full panic molting. The smell was getting terrible. But then something unexpected happened. The creature's gaze found Maya, and it stopped. Just stopped. For a long moment, predator and human stared at each other through the reinforced, transparent aluminum barrier. The Ravager's massive head tilted slightly to one side, like a confused pet. Its spiked tail, which had been lashing menacingly moments before, went still. Captain Vex 9 frowned. This wasn't part of the script. What are you waiting for? He called down to the creature through the intercom system. There's your target. Fresh meat, just like you ordered. The Ravager looked up at him, then back at Maya. If a creature of pure nightmare could look confused, this one did. Maya, for her part, had moved closer to the barrier. Hey there, big guy, she said softly. You look hungry. The creature made a sound that might have been a whimper. This is highly irregular, Captain Vex 9 muttered, checking his control panel. The creature should be in full hunting mode by now. Maybe it's sick, suggested one of the braver students. Or maybe, Maya said, still looking at the Ravager, it just needs a friend. She pressed her palm against the transparent barrier. The massive predator moved closer until its snout was almost touching the other side of the wall. For a moment, human and monster regarded each other in perfect silence. Then Maya smiled. The effect was immediate and completely unprecedented. The thornback ravager, a creature bred specifically to be the ultimate classroom terror, sat down. Actually, sat down, like a dog. Captain Vex 9's mandibles began clicking rapidly, a sure sign of extreme agitation among his species. "Computer," he barked, "run full diagnostics on the Ravager's behavioral modification protocols." A pleasant artificial voice responded, "All systems functioning within normal parameters, Captain. The subject shows no signs of illness or malfunction." "Then why isn't it trying to eat the human?" "Unknown, sir. This behavior pattern is not catalogued in our database." Maya had begun talking to the creature in low, soothing tones. The words weren't important, just the sound of a calm, friendly voice. The Ravager's tail had actually started wagging. If something that ended in a cluster of bone spikes could be said to wag. "This is impossible," Vex 9 muttered. "Absolutely impossible." The creature's aggression inhibitors were specifically designed to fail in the presence of stress pheromones, and humans produce some of the most potent stress pheromones in known space. "Are you sure about that?" Maya asked, glancing up at him, "because right now I'm feeling pretty relaxed." And she was. While every other being in the room was radiating fear in waves that even the air filtration systems couldn't handle, Maya Collins stood there like she was at a petting zoo. The Ravager had moved even closer to the barrier now, pressing its massive bulk against the transparent wall. Its yellow eyes never left Maya's face, and it made a sound that could almost be described as purring. If chainsaws could purr. "Computer," Captain Vex 9 said desperately, "initiate emergency starvation protocols. Increase the creature's hunger drive to maximum." "I'm sorry, Captain, but I cannot comply with that request." "What? Why not?" "The creature's stress levels have dropped to near zero. Initiating starvation protocols at this time would constitute animal cruelty under Confederation regulations." If Captain Vex 9 had been human, he would have started pulling his hair out. Since he was Catherian, he settled for molting stress scales all over his uniform. Maya had somehow found a way to rest her forehead against the barrier, and the Ravager was doing the same from its side. They looked like they were sharing some sort of moment. "This is not how this is supposed to work," the captain muttered. "The human should be screaming. The creature should be hunting. There should be blood, and terror, and educational value." "Maybe," said Maya without turning around, "your teaching methods need some work." The audacity of it left the entire class speechless. A human, barely out of her home system, was casually critiquing a decorated Catherian military officer. On his own turf, in front of his own students. And the worst part? She was probably right. Because as Captain Vex 9 watched, something unprecedented was happening in his carefully controlled laboratory environment. The Thornback Ravager, bred to be the perfect killing machine, was rolling over on its back like an overgrown puppy. Maya laughed, a sound that somehow made the entire chamber seem brighter. The creature's massive paws pressed against the barrier, and Maya matched the gesture with her hands. For a moment, the two of them looked like they were high-fiving through several inches of the strongest material known to science. "Incredible," whispered one of the mechanoid students. "The human has somehow achieved perfect behavioral synchronization with a Class 7 predator." "It's not synchronization," said another voice from the back of the room. "It's domination. Look at the creature's posture. It's completely submissive." Captain Vex 9 activated his recording equipment. Whatever was happening here, Command was going to want to see it. "Miss Collins," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "Would you mind explaining exactly what you think you're doing?" Maya glanced up at him. "Making a new friend, I think." She turned back to the Ravager, who was now making happy rumbling sounds that vibrated through the floor. "What do you think, buddy? Want to be friends?" The creature's tail wagged harder, sending small debris flying around the containment chamber. "This is unprecedented," Captain Vex 9 said into his recorder. "Subject displays no fear response whatsoever. Predator has abandoned all aggressive behaviors. Recommend immediate evaluation by Xenopsychology Department." "Oh, come on," Maya said, finally turning away from her new friend. "It's not that complicated. Haven't you ever had a pet?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. "A pet?" Vex 9 repeated slowly. "Yeah. You know, a companion animal? Something you take care of and play with?" She gestured at the Ravager, who was now lying on its back with its legs in the air. "This guy's just lonely. Probably been stuck in a cage for months, right? No wonder he's unhappy." The silence that followed was profound. Because Maya was right, of course. The Ravager spent most of its time in isolation, brought out only for demonstrations like this one. It was fed, maintained, and kept healthy. But it had no companionship, no stimulation beyond the occasional terrified cadet, no friends. "The creature," Captain Vex 9 said carefully, "is not a pet, Miss Collins. It is a weapon, a tool for education and testing." "Maybe that's the problem," Maya replied, and with that simple statement, she managed to question everything Captain Vex 9 thought he knew about predator management, student evaluation, and the proper way to run a xenobiology program. The Ravager had rolled back onto its stomach and was now pressing its enormous head against the barrier again, making soft whimpering sounds whenever Maya stepped away. "Class dismissed," Captain Vex 9 said abruptly. "Sir?" One of the braver students raised a tentacle. "What about the demonstration?" The captain looked at Maya, who was now playing some sort of patty cake game with a creature that could have torn apart a battle cruiser. "I think," he said slowly, "we've learned quite enough for one day." As the students filed out, chattering excitedly in a dozen different languages, Captain Vex 9 remained behind. He watched Maya and her unlikely friend for several more minutes, his compound eyes recording every detail. Finally, he activated his communicator. "This is Captain Vex 9, he said. "I need to speak with command immediately. We have a situation." Maya looked up at him and smiled. "Don't worry, Captain. I think everything's going to work out just fine." The Ravager rumbled in agreement, its tail still wagging, and for the first time in his long military career, Captain Vex 9 found himself wondering if maybe, just maybe, a human might actually know what she was talking about. Part 2 would reveal just how right she was, and how completely unprepared the galaxy was for that possibility. 3 hours later, Captain Vex 9 found himself in the most uncomfortable position of his military career, standing at attention in front of a holographic projection of Admiral Crix Prime, the most decorated officer in the Catherian fleet. The Admiral's 12 eyes were all focused on him with laser precision, which was never a good sign. "Let me understand this correctly, Captain." The Admiral's voice carried the kind of authority that made stars rearrange themselves out of respect. "A single human female has somehow managed to pacify our most dangerous training specimen using nothing but conversation." "That's correct, sir." Vex 9's mandibles twitched nervously. "The creature has remained completely docile for the past several hours. It refuses to eat, move to its regular containment area, or respond to any stimuli except Miss Collins herself." "And where is Miss Collins now?" Still in the observation chamber, sir. She's been, well, she's been keeping the Ravager company. Through the reinforced viewport behind him, Maya could be seen sitting cross-legged on the floor, apparently telling stories to the massive predator. The creature lay beside her like an enormous, spike-covered dog, occasionally making happy rumbling sounds that vibrated through the entire facility. Admiral Crix Prime's expression could have frozen plasma. Captain, need I remind you that the Thornback Ravager program cost the Confederation over 2 billion credits to develop? These creatures were specifically engineered to be the ultimate test of courage and tactical thinking. Yes, sir. I'm aware of that, sir. And now you're telling me that a human has somehow… what? Domesticated it? Before Vex 9 could respond, Maya's voice came through the intercom system. She was apparently in the middle of some sort of story. So then my little brother Jake decided he was going to catch the neighbor's cat, right? But this cat, Whiskers, was about 3 times smarter than Jake gave it credit for. She paused to scratch behind what might charitably be called the Ravager's ear. Long story short, Jake ended up stuck in a tree for 4 hours, while Whiskers sat at the bottom, just staring at him. The Ravager made a sound that could almost pass for laughter. Admiral Crix Prime's 12 eyes narrowed to slits. Captain, I want a full psychological evaluation of this human. Immediately. Already in progress, sir. Dr. Yelana from the Xenopsychology Department should have preliminary results within the hour. Good, because if this gets out, we're going to have every pacifist group in the galaxy demanding we convert our training facilities into petting zoos. As if summoned by the mention of her name, Dr. Yelana Thresh appeared in the doorway. The Valdorian scientist was one of the most respected minds in her field. Her purple-scaled hide marked with the intricate tattoos that indicated advanced academic achievement among her people. Admiral, Captain, she nodded to each in turn. I've completed my initial assessment of the human subject. And? Admiral Crix Prime leaned forward. Dr. Thresh consulted her datapad, her 4 fingers dancing across the surface with practiced efficiency. The results are unusual. Miss Collins displays none of the typical fear responses we associate with predator encounters. Her stress hormone levels remain baseline. Her heart rate is actually slightly slower than normal. And her brain scans show patterns consistent with, well, with contentment. Contentment, the Admiral repeated flatly. Yes, sir. She appears to be genuinely enjoying herself. Through the viewport, Maya had apparently moved on to a different story. The Ravager was now lying on its back again, all 4 legs in the air, making happy sounds as she described something involving what she called a golden retriever named Buddy. What I find most intriguing, Dr. Thresh continued, is that her behavior appears to be triggering some sort of pack bonding response in the Ravager. The creature's hormone levels indicate it now considers her to be part of its family unit. Captain Vex 9 felt a cold chill run down his exoskeleton. Doctor, are you saying the creature has adopted her? In a manner of speaking, yes. From the Ravager's perspective, Miss Collins is now under its protection. Any attempt to separate them or threaten her would likely result in an extremely violent response. This was getting worse by the minute. Admiral Crix Prime activated his personal communicator. Priority Alpha message to Confederation Command. We have a Code 7 situation developing. Request immediate consultation with the Human Liaison Office. Sir, Captain Vex 9 ventured, perhaps we should speak with Miss Collins directly. Get her perspective on the situation? Fine. Bring her up here, but keep that thing sedated. Actually, sir, That might not be advisable. The creature becomes agitated whenever Miss Collins is out of visual range, and given its new protective instincts. The Admiral's expression suggested he was seriously considering early retirement. Dr. Thresh cleared her throat. If I may suggest an alternative, why don't we go down to the observation chamber? Allow Miss Collins to remain with the creature while we conduct our interview? 20 minutes later, the three officers found themselves in the bizarre situation of conducting a formal military briefing while sitting on the floor of a containment chamber with a Grade 7 predator serving as an impromptu conference table. Maya had somehow convinced the Ravager to lie down lengthwise, creating a living, breathing, occasionally purring barrier between the humans and the military personnel. She sat comfortably against the creature's side, one hand absently stroking its scales. "So," she said conversationally, "I'm guessing this doesn't happen very often?" Admiral Crix Prime studied her with the intensity of someone trying to solve a particularly challenging puzzle. "Miss Collins, I need to ask you some questions about your background." "Shoot." "Have you ever undergone any form of psychological conditioning or enhancement?" Maya blinked. "You mean like therapy? I saw a counselor in high school when my parents got divorced, but I wouldn't call that enhancement. Any genetic modifications, pharmaceutical augmentations, psionic implants?" "Nope, just regular old human, as far as I know." She paused. "Well, my mom always said I had a way with animals, but I figured that was just because I grew up on a farm." Dr. Thresh leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. "Tell me about this farm." "Nothing special. Couple 100 acres in rural Nebraska. We raised cattle, had some horses, a bunch of dogs and cats. The usual." Maya shrugged. "My dad always said if you treat animals with respect, they'll treat you the same way back." "And did you have any unusual experiences with these animals?" Maya laughed. "Define unusual. I mean, there was the time a mountain lion wandered onto our property. Everyone was freaking out, calling animal control and whatnot. But when I went out to check on the horses, the thing was just sitting in the pasture, calm as you please." The three officers exchanged glances. "What happened then?" Captain Vex 9 asked quietly. "I talked to it. Told it there wasn't any food for it on our land, but there was a deer trail about a mile north that might be more promising." She scratched the Ravager behind the ear again, and it rumbled contentedly. It listened for a few minutes, then just got up and left. Never came back. The silence that followed was pregnant with implications. "Miss Collins," Admiral Crix Prime said carefully, "do you understand what you've done here today?" "Made a friend?" Maya suggested. "You've somehow managed to override millions of years of evolutionary programming in one of the most dangerous creatures known to science. The thornback Ravager is an apex predator. It shouldn't be capable of the kind of behavior you've triggered." Maya looked down at the creature, which had rolled slightly onto its side to give her better access to its belly. "Maybe the problem isn't with him. Maybe it's with your assumptions." "I beg your pardon?" "Well, think about it. You take an intelligent creature, lock it up by itself, only let it out when you want it to be scary and aggressive. Then you act surprised when it turns out to be lonely and wanting companionship." She met the Admiral's gaze directly. "How is that different from child abuse?" The question hit like a plasma bolt to the face. Dr. Thresh was frantically taking notes. "Miss Collins, are you suggesting that the creature's aggressive behavior was learned rather than instinctual?" "I'm suggesting that any intelligent being will respond to how it's treated. If you treat something like a monster, it'll act like a monster. If you treat it like a friend, she gestured at the peacefully sleeping Ravager. Well, you get this. Captain Vex 9 found himself reconsidering everything he thought he knew about predator psychology. But the creature was specifically bred for aggression. Its genetic programming, ... Genetics aren't destiny, Maya interrupted. My neighbor back home had a pit bull named Princess. Sweetest dog you ever met. Loved kids. Wouldn't hurt a fly. But if someone had taken that same dog, locked her up, starved her, and only let her out to fight, she would have been completely different. Admiral Crix Prime activated his communicator again. Cancel that Code 7 alert. Initiate Protocol 12 instead. Protocol 12. Captain Vex 9 had only heard of it in theoretical terms. It was the emergency directive for when the Confederation encountered something that fundamentally challenged their understanding of the universe. Sir, he said carefully, are we really going to restructure our entire training program based on one human's intuition? Captain, the Admiral's voice was grim, if Miss Collins is correct, then we've been fundamentally wrong about predator psychology for the past 2 centuries. The implications go far beyond our training programs. Maya had apparently grown tired of the conversation and had curled up against the Ravager's side. The massive creature adjusted its position to make her more comfortable, then wrapped its tail around her protectively. There's something else, Doctor, Thresh said quietly. I've been monitoring the creature's brain activity during this entire encounter. The neural patterns are unlike anything I've seen before. How so? It's learning, not just adapting or responding, but actually learning complex social behaviors in real time. The rate of neural development is extraordinary. Admiral Crix Prime rubbed his mandibles thoughtfully. Doctor, I want you to prepare a full report for Confederation Command. Include everything. The behavioral changes, the human's background, your theories about social conditioning, everything. Yes, sir, and the Ravager. The Admiral looked at the sleeping creature, now completely relaxed and content. I think it's safe to say that particular specimen is permanently retired from active duty. Maya opened one eye. Does that mean he gets to stay with me? Miss Collins, this creature is worth more than most starships. We can't just… Actually, sir, Captain Vex 9 interrupted. Given the creature's current psychological state, separation from Miss Collins could cause severe trauma, possibly irreversible damage. The Admiral looked like he was developing a migraine. Are you telling me that a Grade 7 predator worth 2 billion credits is now emotionally dependent on a human college student? That would appear to be the case, yes, sir. Maya sat up, suddenly looking much more serious. Look, I get that this is complicated, but I've been thinking about something. She paused, organizing her thoughts. You said these creatures were bred to test courage and tactical thinking, right? Correct. Well, what if you've been testing the wrong things? I mean, anyone can learn to fight or run away, but it takes real skill to turn an enemy into an ally. The simple profundity of that statement hung in the air like a revelation. Miss Collins, Dr. Thresh said slowly, are you suggesting that diplomacy is a more valuable skill than combat readiness? I'm suggesting that the best way to deal with a dangerous situation isn't always to fight your way out of it. Maya gestured around the chamber. Case in point. Admiral Crix Prime was quiet for a long moment, his 12 eyes focused on something far beyond the walls of the containment chamber. Finally, he spoke. Miss Collins, how would you feel about a career change? Sir? The Confederation has been looking for new approaches to first contact protocols. ways to establish peaceful relationships with potentially hostile species. He paused. Your methods, while unconventional, have proven remarkably effective. Maya looked down at her sleeping friend, then back at the Admiral. Would I get to keep him? I think that could be arranged. And so it was that Maya Collins became the youngest diplomat in Confederation history, and the Thornback Ravager became the first Grade 7 predator to retire to a life of leisure and belly rubs. The official reports would describe it as a breakthrough in xenopsychology and interspecies relations. The unofficial truth was simpler. Sometimes the best way to handle a monster is to treat it like a friend. 6 months later, Captain Vex 9 received a postcard from the Andromeda sector. On the front was a picture of Maya and her companion, now officially designated as Ambassador Spike, successfully mediating a territorial dispute between two previously hostile species. On the back, in Maya's familiar handwriting, was a single line. Turns out the weather's nice everywhere when you've got good friends. Captain Vex 9 hung the postcard on his office wall, right next to his commendations. It served as a daily reminder that sometimes the most important lessons come from the most unexpected teachers. And every time a new class of cadets asked him about the proper way to handle a dangerous predator, he would smile and tell them about the day a human farm girl taught the entire galaxy that kindness could be the ultimate weapon.